Hello and welcome to today's video as we look back at 14.13 and whether it changed anything in the meta of Lol Esports. Now, something interesting that I see from this, a couple things. One, all the buffs did not buff the champions in terms of champion presence from 12 to 13, so the buffs, useless. And then we look at the nerfs, and while the nerfs actually weren't so weak that although they nerfed champions, they actually raised in 4 of them rose in presence from 12 to 13 over 10%, which gets them on this board, and we'll talk about that. And 13 also includes EWC, keep that in mind. And then 12 and 13 here, this includes the top 10 champions in presence overall. I include presence and not pick rate because, in my opinion, there are levels and tiers to this, whether you can nerf a champion down. And, like, the highest tier is an automatic ban, right? If a champion's so strong, teams don't want to play against it, it's going to have 100% ban rate or close to it, rumble, essentially. And you're never going to see it. And the thought is, oh, well, because I don't see it, it's not going to bother me as much if I'm watching somebody that might have 90% presence but 60% pick rate. And it's like, well, that's another level. And then you go from must ban to always pick to, go down the list to off meta, off meta, and then just non-existent, right? There's like 5-6 tiers to the whole damn thing. I explained in my last video. But either way, let's go over this. So, on 14-13, we saw nerfs to Brand, Jax, Lilia, and Zyra, and it didn't mean anything. It did not stop the impending tsunami of AP junglers, as Brand went from 12% presence to 42% presence. So 1 in 10 games to 2 of every 5. That is a big jump. Jax in top lane went from 13% to 26%, so doubled from 1 in 10 to 1 in 4. Or just, well, I guess 1 in 8 to 1 in 4. Lilia, 1%. So essentially non-existent. To 28%. So 3 of every 10 games. 1 of 4, 3 to 10. And that's a big difference. You notice all of a sudden, Lilia is being picked quite a bit. And last patch, she wasn't picked at all. So that's something. And even though she was nerfed, it happened. And then Zyra jungle, 1 in 3 games at 33% to 57%. So roughly 3 of 5. That's a big jump too, almost doubled in presence. So those 4 champions we see go up quite a bit in presence. However, do not crack the top 10. This top 10 did change. Actually, what do I have here? Yeah, 6 of 10 remain the same. So on patch 12, if you forgot, Rumble and Skarner dominated at 199% top lane presence. And then in mid lane, we had Tristana Corki at 94 and 85%. And that would carry over to 13. Rumble, Tristana, and Corki still are up there at the top of presence. Then you have Leona at 78% as a top support. She is still the top support on 14-13 at 82%. It's not even close on patch 14-13. Then we have a few 80 carries. So Zeri, 70%. Nautilus at support, 68%. Senna, 68%. Ashe, 67%. And Sejuani, 67%. Sejuani, the only jungler on the board. And then on 14-13, we went over the top 3. But then Ezreal comes in. So Ezreal is now a member of the top 10, coming all the way from 59% presence, so just off the board in this area, to 83%. Clearly the most picked 80 carry. Then you have Leona, and Renekton comes from even lower than Ezreal at 51% kill participation. Champion presence, half of games, to 79%, 3 of every 5. A common pick. We're seeing it quite often. Ashe and Sejuani, still on the board. Went up in presence 11% each, but still on the board, and Sejuani remains as the only jungler. Bottom 2, Quesante actually dropped in presence, but now is top 10. That shows the diversity of champions appearing in draft, whether it's pick or ban, on 14-13 relative to 14-12. The Quesante goes from 65% to 59% and now is in the top 10, whereas before he was probably 11th or 12th. And you could say, oh, well, that only goes up 4. The percentage, I think, tells a lot. And another thing, 94 games on 14-12 and 210 on 14-13, so a better idea of what's going on 14-13 versus 14-12. And lastly, Braum went from 21% kill. Oh, Jesus, I almost did done. Again, 21% champion presence, 1 of every 5 games, to 58%, 3 of every 5. That's a big jump. And what happened to the champions that were up in the top 10 that aren't there anymore? Well, Skarner, non-existent. I wanted to check and I didn't, whether maybe it was just, I don't know, disabled, because it went from 99% to 1%. We saw Skarner get nerfed in previous patches and it not really work, so maybe it caught up to him. That's a possibility. I think they may have been adjusted on 14-12. Zeri goes from 70% to 50%. Nautilus, 68 to 45. Senna, 68 to 30. So more than half of the presence gone of Senna. A chunk from Zeri and Nautilus. And in my opinion, the patch did change something. Now, well, actually, sorry. Let me rephrase that, because the patch didn't change much. The patch, in terms of champions directly buffed and nerfed, it didn't change anything. But a lot of stuff changed on the patch. As we have, 4 of the 10 top 10 champions have changed. And I would say that's a big difference. That's a big chunk. Now, of course, we're still getting the Tristana Corki handshake, and we can be hyperbolic and say that's defining everything in the meta, but I think that it's a little bit foolish, because we see other things going on. You can see, well, 80 carry mid and top lane. That is definitely a thing. Don't get me wrong. I saw Keen's Callista earlier this week, and I think it was on 14-14, but still, that's a thing. That 80 carry all over the place crap is a thing. But keep in mind, in a month or 2, things will change, because they need the arcane meta, because the arcane meta will help them sell things for arcane right after world. So that's just a deal there. But yeah, things changed on this patch. Whether this patch actually did it, I mean, like I've always said, I don't get into the nitty gritty with items, ruinization, and things like that. So it is entirely possible that one of those things has caused this to change. And, I'm just being, I guess, out of sight, out of mind about it. But, yeah, so, take this for what you will. Thank you for watching. If you like the video, like it. Subscribe to the channel for daily League of Legends content. Follow me on Twitter, join the Discord, become a YouTube supporter, and hope to see you again tomorrow.